Check out today's piece of fan art. Oh, Morgan, you look so wicked yet sublime. Seriously, why can't the Pendragon family just get along? Then again, you gotta love a femme fatale. I especially love the smoke effects. Thank you so much, Kudaki Tutu. Welcome back to Otaku Daikun. Daichan here. Lately, I've been playing a lot of Scarlet Nexus. It's a fun game with some minor frustrations in story and gameplay. I think on both these fronts, the game gets a lot better the further on in you get. This goes for the combat especially, as most of the cool things you can do have to be unlocked as you go, meaning that you start out pretty inept. It gave me the impression the game would be clumsy and awkward. But thankfully, once you get all of your upgrades, combat becomes a lot more free and fluid. This happens for a lot of games, but in the case of Scarlet Nexus, I feel like you can't truly enjoy the game's combat the way it was meant to be until you get those upgrades. Kinda like how Xenoblade 2's combat doesn't really take off until you get enough blades to perform all the fancy combos. This got me thinking about something I call character feel, the cathartic experience we get controlling a character on screen. How responsive the controls are, how the animations flow, the specific mechanics available to the character. All of these things combine to create character feel that can either be frustrating or satisfying. After all, we're sitting there with a controller in our hands, and somehow our inputs are supposed to translate into actions for a digital entity. Ideally, this conversion should be seamless, where players no longer have to look at their controllers to know what to do. Controlling a character should be second nature, while making us feel good with the controller in hand, or at the very least, making it feel like when we succeed or fail, it's because of our own deliberate achievements or mistakes. Character feel can be difficult to describe objectively, but it's easy to recognize when you encounter it. The best examples just feel right, oftentimes through intuitive control schemes. Things like pressure-sensitive triggers for racing games are brilliant examples. The process of pressing lightly or strongly on a trigger feels a lot like putting your foot on the gas. Steering, by comparison, can be much trickier, as a D-pad or joystick usually doesn't offer the same level of precision, though it can still totally be done if you design for steering on a standard controller. Face buttons, on the other hand, are much better suited for mashing or comboing. Actions like jumping, which are supposed to be quick and snappy, work great for standard buttons, but even they can have pressure sensitivity, allowing you to do cool things like smash attacks in Super Smash Bros. This is probably the best I can describe them without going into more specific examples. So, without further ado, I'd like to shine a spotlight on certain games that have offered me the absolute best character feel throughout nearly 3 decades of gaming. By far, one of the best experiences I've ever had with video games comes from Tales of Berseria, specifically as I played through as the game's protagonist, Velvet. Now, the Tales of games already have very satisfying battle systems, but I think Tales of Grace's F and Berseria do it best. In battle, you control Velvet in full 360 movement on the ground. By locking onto an enemy, you can easily guard or dash around the axis of a given foe. You perform combos with the face buttons, but Berseria's claim to fame is letting players fully control what attacks their buttons map to, allowing you to mix and match practically any combination of moves available. Even more satisfying is Velvet herself. She fights with an intimidating giant claw that, when swung, can strike a wide area in front of her, and any enemies caught in the strike fill Velvet's combo points, allowing her to continue combos without end as part of a berserker-like mode. It's a risky endeavor as your health begins to drain, but so long as you don't get hit and continue to reuse your claw attack between every few moves, your health and combo points will continue to restore, turning you into an invincible rage machine. The sheer variety of her attacks, mixed with smashing the trigger button to engage her claw, make Velvet an incredibly satisfying character to play as. A more controversial pick may be Cloud and Tifa from the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Mastering this combat system, especially on hard mode, can definitely be a chore. But in this case, even as you're learning, the game has so much spectacle that it's satisfying even when awkward. I chose Cloud and Tifa since they're your big melee fighters, and using them to attack and dodge flows wonderfully. Personally, I love being able to open menus right in the center of combat. The way everything slows down is not only awesome, like bullet time, but also extremely practical, as it lets you assess your surroundings and formulate strategies in the heat of action. Admittedly, having the right materia setups makes a huge difference, as you can turn Tifa into a fast-dodging, CP-burning machine. On Cloud's end, you'll have to constantly swap between his different attack modes, depending on the type of enemy you're facing. If you can afford to let foes come to you, Cloud can remain in a position to counter attacks and unleash more devastating combos of his own. But if you're being fired at with projectiles, you'll need to ditch that mode in order to dodge at the expense of your offensive might. While it has a steeper learning curve, the remake's battle mechanics ultimately provide some really smooth, dynamic, and flashy character feel. More akin to the Tales series are the Ys games. When the 6th game came out, The Ark of Nepishtim, we were treated to an amazing action-adventure RPG, where you control Adol Kristen from a mostly top-down view, armed with some basic ground and aerial attacks. The game blended these simple slashes with a bit of platforming, allowing you to hack away at enemies as they charge and swing at you, or fire projectiles akin to a bullet hell. It made up for any lack of flashy animations with challenging precise control and some vicious difficulty. Oath and Felghana is just as good, if not better. The newest Ys games are all variations of a party system, where Adol is joined by allies that can be swapped between on the fly to exploit enemy weaknesses. The 8th game, Lacrimosa of Dana, basically perfects this system by combining the old-school platforming of Nepishtim and Felghana with the more complex party system to make a powerful experience that offers exciting special attacks without losing the precise nature the series is known for. Another game that brilliantly combines platforming and combo-based action is Nier Automata. Of the game's characters, I especially love playing as 2B, as she's more in your face with melee attacks. Playing as a cybernetic hero like her, it's fun just sprinting around the city, but of course the battles are amazing too. Like Ys, you'll find yourself dodging enemy projectiles in a 3D space to perform kick-ass combos that flow as deliciously as a chocolate fountain. The main thing I want to praise about Nier Automata is how it shifts control modes on the fly, and it's never confusing. Sometimes you'll be fighting on the field map with full 360 control of the camera, but other times you'll be battling from a profile or overhead view. No matter which of these modes you're in, the controls are identical, so you can enjoy a cinematic experience without losing any momentum. Of course, character feel doesn't always have to come from extreme precision. It can also be the product of satisfying mechanics. This is obviously biased, but I'm absolutely in love with playing Artoria in Fate Extella Link. As a Muso game, it's mostly just mashing combos and special attacks in a beat-em-up fashion, but that's exactly why I love it. Playing as my favorite fictional character in a situation where I'm surrounded by enemies and just have to mow them down is just brilliant. The only other character quite that fun is Nero Venus, who's also incredibly satisfying. One game that similarly capitalizes on button-mashing fun is Zone of the Enders, the second runner. Technically, the first game has the exact same appeal, but it's executed better in the sequel. You control Jehuti, a powerful mobile suit that fights enemies in the air. Whether you're rushing in to slash enemies at close range, or keeping distance for a firefight, the way Jehuti moves is swift and responsive. There's something amazing about locking onto enemies in the air, being able to rotate about them while hovering. Honestly, I haven't had this kind of experience since Psychic Force 2012 on the Sega Dreamcast, which also featured lock-on style battles in a floating airspace. The last action combat game I want to mention is actually one I streamed recently on this channel. It's Phantasy Star Online 2: New Genesis. On the surface, it looks like your typical hack-and-slash dodgy action, but the scale and freedom of motion takes things to a whole new level. Your characters can sprint, double jump, wall jump, and glide over long distances, allowing you to explore the game's open world full of cliffs and caverns with ease. You feel like this crazy superhuman badass leaping about the place, which fits when you fight against gigantic enemies like dragons and titans that have multiple weak points all across their bodies. For as little of the game that's actually out at the moment, I have to give them credit for making it so damn fun to control my character through their world. When it comes to platforming, I've gotta say there's something great about how Mario moves in both Mario Sunshine and Mario 64. Minus the N64's glitches and crappy controller, or the presence of a water pack in Sunshine, these Mario games let you run around a sandbox environment where you're able to creatively leap up walls, climb ledges, and simply navigate with impressive freedom. That said, as fun as this is, I don't think either game does really well when instant death pitfalls are a common issue. Speaking of pitfalls, I personally feel that Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is easily the best fighting game ever made. Obviously, it's not a traditional fighter, but I think that's why I like it so much. Its controls are responsive and intuitive, allowing even newcomers to enter the ring and still stand a chance. Dodging and ducking are fun and extremely useful. Smash attacks, as I mentioned earlier, are wonderful in that they attack in the direction you're aiming and allow you to hold their charge until the perfect moment to unleash them. It's also great to play as characters like Lucina, who can counter opponents' attacks. To add a nice cherry on top, I love how Ultimate briefly pauses the action and shakes the camera when a fatal strike has landed, amplifying its weight and significance. Now, while I've played fighting games with my brother for years, I can't say I'm the biggest fan of them. It always depends on the character and game in question, but I generally feel the way fighting games handle their controls to be anything but intuitive at times. Even so, my favorite experience in a fighting game has come from playing as Zeta in Granblue Fantasy Versus. It's certainly not the most original game in the genre, but I feel its gorgeous visuals help sell the appeal, making your attacks feel way more intense. Similarly, I don't happen to play a lot of shooting games, but among them, I can say I very much appreciate how Master Chief handles in Halo 3. While a mouse and keyboard will always be faster and more precise than a dual joystick controller, I feel like Halo 3, at least the version I played on 360, made the most of what a controller could do. A majorly satisfying aspect of its gameplay is how vehicles control the exact same as you do on foot, making the transition between them feel seamless, at least when the Warthog isn't flipping over because it steers so wobbly. With that, my last two games happen to be racing games. Need for Speed Carbon was the series' answer to the drifting craze brought on by Initial D, later whitewashed by the Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift. You play as a street racer who has to form a crew and work your way up to racing the city's most acclaimed drivers. The actual racing is really fun, but what I mostly want to focus on is the game's mountain drifting missions, which are both challenging yet awesome. The amount of control the game gives you as you whip around turns is unrivaled by pretty much every other racer. That is, except for the last game in this video, Mario Kart Double Dash. Drifting in Mario Kart is made to be pretty simple, but that doesn't make it any less fun. While more recent Mario Kart releases are certainly the most appealing from a visual standpoint, my heart personally stays with the GameCube release, specifically because of how fun its drifting was. I never did like the idea of the drift button acting as a jump, so I really appreciated how Double Dash removed that idea in favor of a tighter, more seamless drift. Sadly, with no modern release of the game, Mario Kart has returned to its more classical form, and Double Dash remains a relic of its time. So there you have it, my personal top picks for the best character feel in video games. Obviously, I play almost exclusively Japanese games, but that doesn't mean there aren't examples of great character feel in Western games, too. That's part of why I want to know what your personal favorite character feels are. Which games from any region do you find are satisfying to control, and what about them makes them work so well? If it's easier, feel free to mention games that you think had absolutely horrible character feel. Either way, I'm excited to hear your examples in the comments below.
Thanks for watching!
If you enjoy this channel, help us grow by liking, commenting, sharing the video, subscribing to Otaku Daikun, and
most of all, smashing that notification bell so you don't miss out on all of our anime discussion, lore, or Let's Play content.
You can support us directly through Patreon, Subscribestar, or our YouTube membership, all of which come with benefits like exclusive vids and early access.
As always,
celebrate your fandom!